Hi guys, so today we are doing a video on cherry blossoms. So I had wanted to do this one last month, and then just things have been a bit behind schedule, I'd say, this year. So anyway, I don't have like an actual branch of blossoms I'd kind of hoped to have a branch of blossoms that we could like look at in the video and paint. So we're just going to go through from a photo and of some footage that I took in April, and then we will just go from there. So, and then I just kind of showing you that when I finished the video, I kind of just was also playing on the other side of the page. So this is in the new Indigo papers, Indigo art papers sketchbook. I'll link that below as well. I know it can be difficult when I'm speaking and trying to keep up with the footage here as well. So the last huge book that I showed you was the Indigo art paper sketchbook. This one is the Hahnemule sketchbook. It's the Hahnemule watercolor portrait sketchbook. So I'll link this below. I think it's a little bit cheaper on Jackson's if you get the landscape, not this portrait one. So I'll link it on Amazon and on Jackson's. But here are the blossoms that I kind of did a few years ago, and we're kind of going to do something like this, but we're going to take it a little bit further, and we're going to look at how to do backgrounds behind the watercolors. So if you've added in, you know, your painting, how do you then go back with the white background and add in around that. So we're going to look at that today as well. And you can see here, this is the Indigo art papers sketchbook. So I talked about this a few weeks ago, and I will link it again. You can see the difference in size here, but it's just got these beautiful handmade sheets of cotton paper in it. So you can see, true to form, I went to the back of the sketchbook, did some swatches, and just kind of did a preliminary wash on the papers there to just try the see how the watercolor performs on the paper. And I will talk about this today. The paper curls up when you like fully wash it, and I'll show you that today, and then it just dries back flat. So it might be a little bit difficult to work with in that respect, but I think there's always a bit of give and take, whichever sketchbooks or colours or brushes or whatever you're working with. You kind of have to adapt a little bit just to how that one performs. So like you can see here, I really love the vellum in the middle as well, and I think it gives you kind of an opportunity to either try out some different techniques and some different supplies. So you can see here that I just have the pencil swatches, and then I've just used watercolor on the background. So today we're going to use this palette, and I do have a video for this palette, but I also have changed it around a little bit, and later on this year, when I finally get around to doing the old Masters palette, some of these things will be moved over to that palette, and this one is going to get a little bit of a renewing. Okay, so this is the picture that we're going to use, and I will put a little bit of footage of the blossom trees at the end. I probably should have added them at the beginning. So I'm just showing you here that I'm looking at the shapes here of the petals and some of the ways when they curl in, and where the light hits and the shadow and all those things. So I'm just kind of taking that into consideration, and then I want to actually use Cinabrese shell pink and the iridescent, what is it? It's the interference copper from Daniel Smith. So I will also put those below. So the Cinabrese Wallace Seymour colour, I really love it. It's kind of their flesh tone, but I just love it as kind of a peachy colour, so I use it quite a lot. You could also use like an ochre and mix in a tiny bit of a red, and then water the wash down quite a lot, so to get something similar. Okay, so you can see here that I'm just starting to put the petals down, and I am making this a little bit larger than in the picture, and larger than they would be in real life, probably double or 2.5 times the size, just to fill up the paper and kind of make it a little bit easier. So you can use a smaller brush to to do it, but I'm just using the number 6 Escoda. This is the one I really enjoy, and you can see this one that I use all the time it's not pointed. I think that generally Escoda brushes are quite pointed. I think I just got one that was not as pointy, but I actually really enjoy it because it makes me a bit more painterly. It's a bit more, I feel like I can be a bit more expressive and a bit looser rather than kind of being really finicky with the details when I'm trying not to be, if that makes sense. Okay, so I have kind of put the blossoms where I kind of want to place them around the page. And now I'm going in with a little bit of yellow. This is the Schmincke Lemon Yellow. And I'm also considering trying the Winsor & Newton Cadmium Free Lemon Yellow. So I will let you know how that goes and if I do that. But I really like this one. And I'm just looking for a little bit of more of a light, fast version of it. So anyway, I do that, and then I am using the Shell Harp Light here from Earth Mineral Arts. So it's kind of a ochre, so you could use like French ochre or a different ochre. And I really like mixing a little bit of an ochre with the lemon yellow to give it a bit more warmth and a bit more depth. But I really like starting with the lemon yellow so you get that pop of brightness as well, and then you can kind of tone it down and work with it and let it kind of move on the page and blend. So I know some of you have asked me if I can put the colours up on the screen, but it's just more work, so I will just try and link them or put them in the description. But here you can see, I just don't know if I'll ever get the videos done is the problem. So here you can see I've taken this really large Escoda Versatil brush. So this is a number 20, and I am just putting water on the background. No paint, no pigment, just water. So I am wetting the entire background, and you can see there that the background does bubble up a little bit there. So it makes it a little bit more difficult if you're trying to paint something that you want really controlled. But here what I'm just doing is painting some wet on wet blossoms. So we just painted wet on dry, and now I want, and so that gives you a little bit more control over the edges and the precision, like how you want that to look. But now I want these blossoms to, like on the tree, they kind of fade into the background. So I am trying to do that here with the wet on wet. So one thing I learned about the paper from this is that I should have used a brush that held a little bit more water because it dried too quickly. So even though you could see how wet the paper was, it still needed to be a little bit more wet to keep working for the amount of time that I needed to. It started to actually dry before I was finished putting the wet on wet in. So you can re-wet those parts, but I was kind of running out of time here. I'm running against the clock to kind of get these videos done. So I just kind of went with it, and but you can definitely slow down the process, and you can see here that I've let the whole thing dry, and now I am putting the second glaze on. So I'm kind of trying to add in some of those shadow areas with a darker, more saturated version of the colour. So once I'm happy with that, I go back and I'm constantly tweaking these shadow colors. So here you can see that I have some shell pink and the Sleeping Beauty turquoise, or try like a cobalt blue or something like that, or cobalt turquoise. And then I'm also using the Sedona with the shell pink. So I'm mixing up sort of a warm and a cool variation of a shadow, and I'm using that throughout the painting. And what's the other thing I was going to say? This is quite a a lengthy process. Like, I have tried to sort of condense it so I can get a video done, but it still took me, I think, 2 days to just let each layer dry and then sort of go back and redo it. So like you can see here, now that that's all done and dry, I'm putting in just some branches here. So okay, so I'm using roasted French ochre and I'm adding in a little bit of hematite, and I'm also lifting some of the colour to re-highlight it. So I do that in a minute, but I'm just basically going through and putting a few of these branches that are in focus that I'm trying to do, and then we'll go back in and do the same thing we did with the blossoms, and we're going to wet the background because it's fully dry again, and we're going to sort of just wet it where we want to put in some of these softer out of focus branches, and just use that for wet on wet as well. So you can see here there's the wet on dry branches, and I really like this whole process for this. We're kind of doing the wet on wet and the wet on dry, and we're kind of seeing what we can accomplish with each one and just practicing each one. Okay, so once that is all done, we let that dry again, and then you can see here that while this is drying as well, I'm lifting off some highlights around the page. So some in the blossoms themselves, some in the blossom branches. So you can see, because I've used more muted colours than the other ones that were a bit more pink, this one needs some more colour on the page. So I'm also showing you here that you can go back in and put in another layer of transparent petals on top. So we're actually going to do another cherry blossom video in a little, not, in a few weeks or so, and just talk about some transparent layering. I'd really like to go back and try some more flowers with the glazes, but so we're just going to finish this this off today. But I just wanted to kind of show you there's a lot of different options and different ways that you can paint this. So I'm just going in with a bit of the Schmincke gold here and adding a little bit of highlight into the center of the blossoms. And then we're going to add some colour into the background. So I think I started saying before and then I got off topic, but this is quite a long project. So if you wanted to take a week to do this and just every day sit down for 20 minutes, do that layer and then let it dry, and then come back the next day and do another layer. This is a really nice project to work on that way. So you don't have to be work on it all in one sitting. you can just take your time and just enjoy sort of having something each day to come back to and add a little bit more to it. So we are going back to the wet on wet, but you can see here that I was careful how much water's in my brush. I don't want to sort of over saturate the water here to where it's sort of going into blossoms or the areas I don't want it to go. So I've just put it on the areas of the background that I want to softly blend out, and I'm actually using some of the Isaro Eternal Summit here for the background. You can use like a blue and a white, or just a very watered out blue, or you know, some type of cobalt turquoise. And so it's a very soft wash, and then I've also added in, I think, a little bit of Fuchsite as well. So I'm just, at this point, I'm just enjoying the painting process, and I'm trying a few different things here. I have an oil pastel here that I'm trying, but I didn't really like the way it worked in this, you know, for this particular painting. So I just go back to pencils, and I've picked out a couple of colours to sort of blend in with this theme. And I think these are all colours in my favourite pencils video as well. So what I'm doing is, just with light circular motions, I'm just adding a little bit more depth and saturation to some areas of the background here. So I don't want it to be very pronounced. I'm blending it softly into the watercolor, but I'll add it a little bit stronger and more defined around those blossoms, and then I just sort of gradually fade it off into the background there. And the other thing that I do here as well is I use some of the, there's a very light blue here that I use in the blossoms to actually bounce some of that light, the light blue of the sky, and reflect it in the blossoms and in the shadows on the blossoms as well. So that's pretty much it for this video. Then on the other page I do, so you can see kind of the shimmer when it hits the light just right, which I really love. And we've done a few videos about the iridescent colours, so it's not necessarily something you see all the time. It's just when the light hits it and you get that really beautiful sort of unexpected magic. It's a really you're kind of surprising people and just sharing that magic of what you were enjoying while you were doing the watercolor, I guess. So on the opposite page I used pencils, and I'm really sorry for the noise in the background, by the way. So these videos have just been a real struggle to get out lately. But so yeah, you could see, what was I saying? On the other page I used some pencils, did some pencil blossom, and then just created sort of a little emblem around that as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can work on these flowers, and these are some of flowers left from my sister's birthday bouquet. So I will leave you with that, and I will try and get another video up soon. Bye guys, have a great weekend.